everyone, and welcome to Smash Reviews, the show where I talk about my thoughts on certain games and whether or not I think they're worth playing. Today we're going to be starting with the recently released Sonic Forces, so without further ado, let's begin. Sonic. I love this series to no end. I own every mainline game in the series, I've read the comics, I've seen the TV shows. I am by all means a Sonic fan. But for the sake of being fair, let's try to avoid a bias. I really hate having to start this review with a retrospective of the previous games, but I feel like I don't have much of a choice here. It's no secret that Sonic's quality in 3D has been all over the place. Had a solid start with Sonic Adventure, which while certainly showing its age is still a very enjoyable time. While its sequel wasn't as good, I'm still perfectly capable of having a lot of fun with it. Then came Sonic Heroes, which can still be a fun time despite its many flaws revolving around its main gimmick. However, after that, things started going downhill. First there was Shadow the Hedgehog, a game that's just bad with its ridiculously gritty atmosphere, slippery controls, and an unfocused mission-based gameplay. And after that, the series hit rock bottom with Sonic 06, which at this point has become so notorious I shouldn't even need to describe it. Sonic Team started getting their act together with Sonic Unleashed, but while the game was certainly functional, it left a lot to be desired with shallow Sonic stages and tedious Werehog stages. Sonic Colors finally showed how competent Sonic Team could be by ditching the Werehog and putting more thought into Sonic's level design. But it fell short in 3D, spending most of its time in 2D. 1 year later we got Sonic Generations, which showed what the boost formula introduced in Unleashed was truly capable of, featuring some of the best 3D level design in the series. But then Sonic Lost World came out, introducing another new parkour formula, which had an unfortunate learning curve and a lack of identity. After that though, there were no mainline Sonic games released for 4 years. 2014 had the release of the controversial side franchise Sonic Boom. The games are unanimously terrible, but we also got a TV series that greatly exceeded the expectations of many. 2015 didn't have anything released at all, but then, last year, for Sonic's 25th anniversary, 2 Sonic games were announced. First there was the absolutely wonderful Sonic Mania developed by Christian Whitehead and a whole bunch of other passionate fans, and then after that was this game, the then unnamed Sonic Forces. All we got at the time was a teaser featuring Sonic in a fiery city and the return of classic Sonic just 2 games after Generations. This certainly raised some questions. Join the Resistance? That almost reminds me of the Saturday morning Sonic cartoon. Is Sonic trying to be dark again like in Shadow and Sonic 06? Is classic Sonic just there for the sake of pandering? Who's this Infinite? Why are all these guys working under Eggman? What's this third gameplay element the developers were talking about? Eventually, the third gameplay element was revealed to be your own custom character. Holy shit! Fan characters are canon now? You can play as Original the character? Cold Steel the Hedgehog? Blonic? The jokes practically write themselves! Over time though, as more parts of the game were shown off, things started looking more divisive than usual among the Sonic community. Now that the game's out, how well does it do? Let's start with the story, and I'm gonna be going into detail, so if you don't want to be spoiled, you can skip to this time here. It all starts with Eggman talking about how all of his hate for Sonic has been fueled into his latest creation. Immediately after, Sonic is seen rushing through Green Hill to get to a nearby city which Eggman is attacking. Upon doing so, Sonic is immediately attacked by Shadow, Chaos, Zavok, Metal Sonic, and its mysterious figure known as Infinite. They all gang up on Sonic and he's unable to hold up against all 5 of them, quickly knocking him out. With Sonic out of the way, Eggman quickly takes over the world, because for some reason Sonic's friends, who have been more than capable of handling Eggman without Sonic, are somehow useless as a group. Despite this, they form a resistance so they can stop Eggman, led by Knuckles of all people. I know this guy's a capable fighter, but he's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, and this game is certainly aware of that.
I thought up this strategy in about a minute and a half. We're going in hard and fast. We're not gonna stop till Eggman's army is destroyed.
Either way, they're getting a new recruit. Now it's time to create your character. I personally find the decision to add one a very nice choice, as it makes for a great selling point. Anthropomorphic animals aren't really my thing though, so here's Joker from Persona 5. Joker managed to escape Infinite and make it to the Resistance base without any trouble. It's right after he joins that the Resistance finds out that Sonic is still alive and being held captive on the newly rebuilt Death Egg. Meanwhile, Tails is trying to repair Omega when Chaos attacks him. Tails starts cowering in fear, hoping that Sonic will help him, and just in that moment, Classic Sonic appears from a portal and effortlessly takes out Chaos. Wow, that was a little too convenient. If you didn't play Sonic Mania or never beat the game with all the emeralds, classic Sonic might look like it came out of nowhere, but during his battle with Eggman and the Heavy King at the end of the game, the Phantom Ruby sent him through a portal, leading him here. Tails also notes that he's from another dimension. Classic Sonic is from another dimension now instead of another time.
Ah, yeah. Well, whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
I don't see the point in changing a plot point like this just 2 games later, but considering this is Sonic Team we're talking about, I can't say I'm surprised. Anyway, Chaos mysteriously fades away and classic Sonic and Tails team up to stop Eggman. Meanwhile, Sonic escapes and fights Zavok, who also fades away upon defeat. Despite supposedly being tortured for the last 6 months, Sonic seems perfectly fine in both mind and body. Kinda similar to how Tails supposedly lost it after Sonic was presumed dead, but he seems just fine in the next appearance he makes. Makes me wonder how much the writers really communicated with each other, or if they even really cared in the first place. Anyway, Sonic then runs into Joker and they leave the Death Egg. Silver then fights Infinite, loses, Sonic comes to his rescue, but also loses, and Joker picks up a prototype Phantom Ruby replica that Infinite dropped, which is the only significant thing that happens here. Classic Sonic and Tails fight Eggman, and Eggman says he has a plan. Okay then. After meeting up with Tails and Classic Sonic, the group then spots Shadow in the city and try to confront him about why he's working with the enemy. Then the real Shadow appears and reveals that Shadow and every other enemy were actually fakes created by the Phantom Ruby. Don't you love it when a plot point that's heavily hyped up in the previews and even an interview ends up meaning absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things? Anyway, it turns out Infinite was originally the leader of the Jackal Squad, a group of bandits or thieves or bounty hunters or something. They tried to raid Eggman's base, but Eggman quickly overpowers them with the Phantom Ruby, which he just happened to find on the ground only a minute or 2 before. He then decides he likes Infinite and wants him to join the Eggman Empire, to which he immediately accepts without hesitation. He then proceeds to get curb stomped by Shadow, throw a tantrum about it, and absorb the power of the Phantom Ruby and put on a mask. Seriously. Honestly, I do not give a shit about Infinite in the slightest. He speaks all dark and sinister just for the hell of it, has a superiority complex that makes Vegeta look tame, and has one of the stupidest backstories out of any Sonic character in the series. Mephiles was more interesting than this, for Christ's sake. They never bother to utilize his character beyond a generic villain, even as far as his powers goes, and to be perfectly honest, I kind of expected this. Anyway, the Resistance tries to attack Eggman's base in Metropolis, but thanks to the Phantom Ruby doing something off screen, they fail miserably and retreat. Tails then deduces that the Death Egg is powering the Phantom Ruby, and that destroying it will make the Ruby lose its power. That's right, the Death Egg is being used to power a gem, and not the other way around. After destroying the Death Egg and trying to raid Metropolis, it turns out that the Death Egg was actually a decoy and that the real power source was in Metropolis, which means that there was honestly no reason for the Death Egg to be in this game to begin with, other than making it as a returning stage in the game. Wasn't the Death Egg supposed to be Eggman's greatest creation ever? An incredible weapon of mass destruction? Here, it has no purpose. None at all. Eggman uses the Phantom Ruby to trap Sonic and Joker in null space, which looks bad until less than a minute later when they manage to escape by doing nothing but mashing the square button. Sonic's death in Sonic 06 was more convincing than this. After that, Eggman uses the Phantom Ruby to make an illusion of the sun appear and wipe them all out. Then everyone just starts fighting while Tails deduces that with the Phantom Ruby prototype Joker picked up, he could make the sun disappear. So he does. No real obstacles or anything. He just teams up with Sonic again to fight Infinite, and then Infinite just leaves. Never to be seen again. Kinda like the Deadly Six at the end of Lost World. Eggman finally uses the Phantom Ruby to power a Death Egg robot, which Sonic, Classic Sonic, and Joker fight against together, and Eggman is defeated. With the Phantom Ruby's power fading, Classic Sonic returns to his home, and everyone gets ready to return the world to its former state, while Joker leaves this mess of a story so he can be in Persona 5 Dancing Star Night. Well, that was a thing. Feels like nobody was really sure how they wanted the story to play out. One very important factor of storytelling is to show instead of tell, and this game's story frequently fails to do that. Another thing I don't like is that the character interactions are near non-existent in this game. You get a little between Team Dark as well as Tails and Classic Sonic, but that's about it. It really shames me that this is the game where the Chaotix finally have even a little plot significance and they don't interact with each other at all, let alone give off any personality traits. Nobody's personalities feel nearly as fleshed out as in previous games, and I have to say, it's disappointing. On the other hand, Sonic's characterization is really well done. I love the snarky banter that Sega's been giving him lately, and I'm happy to say that Sonic Forces does it justice.
Oh, great! See, Infinite? Now we're getting to know each other. So, what's your favorite color? Do you like long, romantic walks on the beach? What's the source of your power? You can skip the first 2 questions if you like.
However, one well-written character doesn't do justice for the rest of the cast. I think Tails is the worst example of them all. He may have gotten captured by Eggman in his debut, but he immediately after proves to be just as capable as Sonic when it comes to fighting Eggman. In Sonic Adventure, he even goes through some character development where he learns to be independent and have faith in himself. Now all he does is just play Mr. Exposition and hide away while Sonic does all the fighting. Granted, this has been a thing since Sonic Unleashed, but it's especially noticeable here. There's a scene where he encounters Chaos in his base form and cowers in fear until classic Sonic rescues him, despite fighting Chaos in Sonic Adventure in a stronger form, no less. I also don't like how he insists he's a better scientist than Eggman, despite Eggman's years of experience in the field in comparison to Tails, who's only 8. There's also the matter of classic Sonic, who has almost no bearing on the plot whatsoever. You could take him out of the game entirely and it wouldn't change the story at all. Really goes to show that he was only shoehorned into the game as a form of cheap pandering, which is perfectly fine if the gameplay makes up for it, but I'll get to that later. Another thing is that while the story has a darker setting, the atmosphere itself isn't too different from the last few games.
Oh, hey, sounds like the party started. Want to let me go and join in? No? Of course not. You hate fun.
Makes me wonder why they even bothered. If I want to see a Sonic story that tries to take itself seriously, I'll play Sonic Adventure 2. That story may have its flaws, but at least it's enjoyable. So now it's time to talk about the gameplay, and if you're hoping it'll be better than the story, I'm sorry to say it's a case of second verse same as the first. There are 3 gameplay styles to talk about, so let's talk about them in detail. First is Modern Sonic, who has returned to the boost formula after Lost World's mixed reception. To be specific, it's a lot like Sonic Colors, in which you have to use white wisps to fill up the boost gauge instead of rings, as well as a double jump instead of a jump dash. Now some of you may be thankful for that alone, but let me tell you that it is not as good as it sounds. Sonic's control has been completely butchered. The homing attack is probably the most finicky it's ever been when you try to lock on. I swear the lock-on only ever works when it wants to. Additionally, Sonic's momentum is all over the place. I counted several points where I either overshot the platform I was trying to land on, or Sonic didn't jump far enough. Had the controls been identical to, say, Colors or Generations, I would have been able to make these jumps with ease. Worst of all, there were a few times when I swear I pushed the button and then nothing happened, especially during those quick step segments or rail switching. All of these issues led to a lot of cheap deaths, and that's just not fun. At least there aren't any lives in the game, but it makes rings less satisfying to grab. Even if there were lives though, it wouldn't mean much. These have to be some of the shortest stages in any 3D Sonic game, but more on that later. On a positive note, if you downloaded the free episode Shadow DLC, you can play as Shadow in modern Sonic stages you've already completed. Personally, I think this was a very good decision. Shadow hasn't been playable since Sonic 06, and it honestly baffles me as to why. He's one of the few characters who can get away with playing exactly like Sonic, and he's always been a fan favorite. He'd certainly be a better choice as another playable character than classic Sonic, who has been nerfed considerably since Generations. You'd think Sonic Team would want to look at Christian Whitehead's retro engine as reference for good control, but it's clear they just didn't care. Momentum is non-existent here, and at times his control feels unfinished. I mean, look at this!
There should be a database somewhere. We have to locate the building it's in. There's a lot of ground to cover, so just finding it will be a chore.
Yes, I know you're supposed to roll there, but a problem like this shouldn't be in the game in the first place. Classic Sonic has all the problems with control that modern Sonic has, only without a double jump or homing attack, making things even more irritating. Classic Sonic is without a doubt the worst part of the game for me, but he has significantly less stages than everyone else, which combined with his minimal involvement in the story tells me he didn't need to be in this game in the first place. Lastly is the avatar. You get to choose what kind of animal you are, with each kind having a different trait, like the bird who gets a double jump, or the cat who keeps one ring after getting hit. After that, you can customize their appearance. You won't have much to work with at first, but as you play the game more, you'll unlock all kinds of gear to dress your character in. You know, like a hat that says gamer on it. It's just a hat that says gamer. It just says gamer. It just says gamer. It just says gamer. It just says The avatar is basically modern Sonic without a boost. They can use their grappling hook to swing on certain objects or use it as a homing attack. Only problem is that you can't use it freely, but only when the game wants you to, and about half the time it activates automatically for cinematic effect. The real difference between the Avatar and Sonic is the Wispin, a weapon using wisp powers. There's one for each wisp, such as the flamethrower for burst, or an electrical whip for lightning. I only really found myself using the burst Wispin you get at the beginning though, because it has a wide range and good mobility. You can also find wisp capsules that utilize their abilities to find hidden goodies in the stages. Problem is, you can only use the one that corresponds to your Wispin. You can see the other ones all the time in the stages themselves, but you can't use them. It was likely done as a way to get players to use other Wispins, but when I don't give a shit about the other Wispins, it becomes a problem. There's also the same control issues that the Sonics have, but I've already complained enough about them. There's also Tag Team Mode, where you play as Sonic and the Avatar together. It's really just a fusion between both their gameplay styles, so there's not really much to talk about. The only unique thing here is the double boost, which just requires you to mash the shit out of the square button and then watch them take off. You can put the controller down for the next minute. The game does everything else for you until the segment is over. The problems don't end with the control, however. There's also the matter of the level design. This has to be the blandest level design in any Sonic game. The 3D sections are straight lines and grind rails a vast majority of the time, and there are several instances where the game just plays itself. If you think I'm exaggerating, let's compare the beginning of Green Hill with the beginning of Sonic Generations' Green Hill, since they're both the first stage in their games.
forces are surging into the city. We need you here now.
Hold on, Tails. I'm on my way. We don't have time to lose. Better kick things up a notch.
Meanwhile, the 2D parts of the games are about as automated as Sonic 4. Every stage is just full of springs and speed boosters, which serve to do all the work for you. Even jumping! Why is this spring here? I can just jump over this! No matter if it's 2D or 3D, every stage is only about a minute or two long, making the game end way earlier than you'd expect it to. Not to mention that there are only a couple of alternate paths to take, and none of them last very long. The only thing to really get out of them is red rings, which sounds nice, but as far as I'm aware, these don't do anything. You'd think they'd get you something like extras, or Chaos Emeralds, or Avatar gear, but they don't get you anything. And Super Sonic, while programmed into the game, is locked behind upcoming on-disc DLC. Why? The bosses, unfortunately, aren't much better. They all go down way too easily. Zavok just requires you to wait for the obvious opening, Metal's fight is an endless runner in which you just need to get close to him to attack, and Shadow and Chaos don't even get boss fights in favor of being taken down during cutscenes. What exactly was the point of having these two in the story? You fight Infinite 3 times, and every one of them is very easy. The third one in particular stands out that it's just a slightly harder version of the Metal Sonic fight. Even the final boss with Eggman is one of the most telegraphed boss fights in the series. Graphically speaking, it looks really nice. Presentation is probably the aspect that had the most effort put into it. The Avatar can look kind of ugly depending on the design you chose though. There's also some cinematics during the stages, and these are a very nice touch, but they're few and far between. Generations, by comparison, always had a sense of spectacle at some point in each stage, but I'm not feeling it here. The game also has a lot of reused stages in comparison to original stuff. Of the 7 locations in the game, 4 of them are from Genesis Sonic games, and they couldn't have been less creative. If it weren't for Sonic Lost World, this would be the 3rd game in a row with Green Hill and Chemical Plant as the first 2 stages in the game. Did they not realize how uncreative that is? If there's one thing I can certainly praise, it's the voice acting. The current voice cast continues to show that they know what they're doing, and even some of the voices I didn't initially care for, like Shadow, are growing on me here.
Infinite can create virtual reality projections. They have mass in form, but no heart and soul.
We're long past the mediocre acting and directing that was the 4Kids days.
Woohoo! Now we're talking! Bring it on!
Where's that damn 4th Chaos Emerald? Don't you dare turn your back on me!
Liam O'Brien gives Infinite a very nice and intimidating voice, and I think it's the most redeeming aspect of his character. Unfortunately, the same praise cannot be said about the music. The soundtrack kinda sucks. Mainline Sonic games have been known for consistently having amazing soundtracks, so this is without a doubt the most disappointing part of the game for me. Classic Sonic has it especially bad, as much like the level design, they decided to take a page from Sonic 4's book by attempting to replicate the Genesis sound font. Thankfully, this time around the songs have length to them, and it actually sounds like the Genesis this time around, but that doesn't help the overall composition. I can count the amount of songs that stuck out to me on one hand, and that's pathetic. Sonic Forces feels like a mess from start to finish. During the whole adventure, it was very clear that none of the higher-ups cared about it. The level designs are linear, the game frequently just plays itself, and the story might just be one of the most uninteresting stories in the series. It almost feels like a parody of the flaws that the Boost Sonic games have. Now with these problems alone, this game would just be meh, but the game's bad control, despite already having perfected the formula 6 years ago, leaves me disappointed, and causes the game to lean into the bad territory. It's hard to believe this game was in development for 4 years when this is the result. It often feels like it was just a rush job a lot of the time. It's as if the developers just assumed that because there were certain elements in there, it would automatically be a good game. This right here is the defining point of stagnation in this series, that while I had a feeling it was coming, I wasn't expecting it this soon. Here's the thing though, I think the source of the problem is less Sonic Team as a whole and more Takashi Iizuka and the other higher-ups. He really doesn't seem to know what even one faction of the fanbase wants, and frequently makes questionable decisions based solely on what he's feeling. Now, I'm not saying that he should be fired, but I do think it would be for the better if he were to involve himself with the series quite a bit less, in favor of letting some new talent show what they've got. They don't even have to focus on 2D aspects, they can focus exclusively on making 3D games, while Christian Whitehead's team continues to make 2D games. If the final product is good, then everybody wins. When the game is like Sonic Forces though, nobody wins. It's nowhere near as enjoyable as the classic games, Adventure, Generations, or Mania, but it's not so bad that you can get even any ironic enjoyment out of it, like Sonic 06. There's really no reason to play this game. I give it a 4 out of 10. Hello everyone, this is Evan. Thank you for watching my review. This is the first time I've ever really done one of these, so I hope I did well. Please feel free to leave a comment on the video. You know, if you want to see more of these, let me know. If you have some criticism on how I can do better at these, please, I'd appreciate that. I've also got some links you can click. There's the link to my main channel. There's also the link to Smash Team Games. It's a Let's Play channel that I do. Among other things, I'm also working on a comic, but you know, more on that another time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some angry comments from Sonic fans to read.